This hardcore wipe has been a tumultuous experience since day one. Even before it released and we were seeing all the incoming changes prior to the wipe, there was this tepid hesitation in the air from the community that this might end poorly. Well, sadly it kind of did. Issues with features we were forced to engage with, problems for many with the pacing of the entire experience, and a general disdain for having to be forced to play it whether you wanted to or not. And the part that stinks the most? This could have all been avoided. There were many different ways BSG could have handled this hardcore wipe and made it an experience that, while still not for everybody, something that people were at least willing to try and play around with. The game needed a shakeup like this, but not exactly like this. So today, instead of talking about what went wrong, let's go over what BSG could have done to get it right and the different lessons that can be learned going forward into 1.0. The biggest issue people had with hardcore initially was just being forced to use mechanics that not only they didn't want to use, but were never fixed from when they were first introduced. Transit has always been an interesting concept that could have been something cool, but it was never iterated on once, nor was it ever even fixed after the marathon event when it was introduced into the game. Bugs and problems with the mechanic persisted all the way until this hardcore wipe. That should have never happened. Things should have been looked at over the course of the year and a half it was in the game. The fact that no one did a single pass over this to make sure it was even working correctly blows my mind. I'm sure that BSG couldn't have accounted for, every conceivable issue once the majority of the player base started using it instead of people using it every once in a while. Okay, that's fine. But having teams spawn on top of each other was simply unforgivable. That at the very least could have been fixed beforehand, but it never did. So already, very early on, people were not happy having to use transit when the entire system was broken from the start. If it worked, and people were a healthy distance from each other, and you could spawn into a raid that was already in progress, I think people would have been a little more receptive about the whole thing. That last change especially, loading into ongoing raids, is something that many, myself included, dreamed could be put into this game. If open world is officially off the table, this is the next best thing. Allowing people to join raids that are 10 or 15 minutes in may put you at a disadvantage to getting loot, but the questions you will have to ask yourself whilst working through that map makes up for it. You don't know who is still alive, you don't have a clue where people are, and you were unsure when someone else might join in, which is something Tarkov raids have needed for a long time. We as a community have figured this game out. There are a ton of variables in the first 30 seconds of a raid that we can't take into account. This would flip that dynamic onto its head, but it was ruined before it got off the ground, which really is a shame. If fixing the mechanics was just somehow completely out of the question, then at the very least some more communication from BSG about exactly what was going to happen could have saved some face as to what the players were about to experience. It's been one of their worst traits over the years, a lack of direct and transparent communication about what is going on behind the scenes, what we should expect, and where we should go to have constructive criticism. 2025 has sadly been the best year for all of this, and I say sadly because it's taken over 8 years to finally get to a point where it feels like sometimes they provide some insight as to what's going on and where to give feedback. There is now a website where the community can suggest or report things and vote on what's either important or just agreed upon by the masses. That way, BSG can kind of get an idea as to what the priority list should be from the community. What also pisses a lot of people off, myself included, is their weird rejection of putting really any ongoing information directly into the game or even the client. If you want to stay up to date with everything, the fastest way to do that is to have a Twitter account and follow both Battlestate and Nikita. Since many, myself included, don't have a Twitter and most likely never will, I find everything out pretty much through the subreddit, and that's not how it should be. Either messages from the system tab in-game or engaging any of the traders filling us in on what's going on would be a big help. If changes are happening to the game, why on God's green earth are they not relayed to us in Tarkov? It's genuinely baffling to me. Hardcore feels like a cobbled mess put together at the last minute. But I think in reality, BSG actually had a plan for this hardcore wipe and are seeing it through pretty much to a T, at least in their eyes. They mentioned before the wipe that things were going to slowly roll out over time as we progress through this wipe. What doesn't feel like was part of the plan was the pacing of some features being rolled out. Since people detested transit so much for good reason, BSG added all the maps back before the first weekend of the wipe. Quests were added 24 hours later, which could have been a part of their plan, but I actually don't think that was the case. They must have known before doing this that hardcore wipe was going to have generally less players than a normal wipe, so with that being the case, I wish they stuck to whatever their initial plan was instead of trying to both capitulate to people complaining about the game being just harder, while also trying to band-aid fix the entire wipe because systems they wanted to use had been broken for years. What it looked like for the first 2 weeks was them backpedaling on chunks of the hardcore wipe because people were causing a stink online. If you had a plan, just stick to it. If something is broken, fix it, but realize that's your fault and it could have been prevented in the first place. It felt like they kind of just caved in on some areas of the game, as they have many times over the years. I understand this was pretty much an experiment, and this was their first time doing something on this scale, but like, come on, man. Just a little more preparation could have saved everybody involved a lot of headaches and conversations in the long run. I can't speak for anybody but myself, but at this point, I feel as though the hardcore wipe should kind of just be turned off. Which makes me sad because we've been going over how all of this could have been avoided. This hardcore experiment, because remember that's ultimately what this was, could have been really fun and dynamic and cool, but a change-up that makes people more reliant on fighting things in raid without forcing people to go play arena if they even want a chance of being successful would have been so interesting. But we're at the point now where we have level 4 traders. I still have level 1 traders because I don't feel like spending all of my money to level up people like Peacekeeper. We're over a month in. Hopefully they've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do if they feel like shaking things up. Insurance prices are still stupid, repairing is stupid, post-raid healing values is stupid. It all just got expensive. Not more difficult or enticing or sacrificial, just more grindy and tedious. Just dump more money into the problem and you'll be good. That's not really good design, so maybe it would be better for everybody at this point to just shut it off and let's move on to the next set of challenges, whatever they may be. My hope with this entire hardcore wipe experience was that lessons were learned for BSG, and they've gained some knowledge about how to shake up the game in ways that feels fun and unique without making the game annoying to play. I was super down for the idea while reading out all the changes from the screenshots, but in practice, it just doesn't live out to the expectations we had for it. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I was giving them too much credit. I'm not sure. Perhaps I was just too excited to see them turn the game on its head after so many years of the same wipe style over and over again. Either way, this all could have been avoided for the most part. People still would have been upset, of course, but at the very least those that participated could have looked back on the experience as a whole with fond memories and say, yeah, that wipe was crazy, but it was a lot of fun and it was so different. And I think that experience missing out really does suck. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts on how the poor reception of hardcore could have been avoided, what else BSG could have done to soften the blow, and be sure to subscribe for more videos about the monstrous failures that had good intentions but didn't land because they weren't executed well at all. Hope to see you in future ones.